Welcome to Step Rumor.
This series contains unverified tales and folklore passed down through generations, created solely for your entertainment.
In the 1980s, during the height of the Cold War, a young cadet was stationed at Artillery Unit 133 in Zunbayan, a desolate, wind-scoured military outpost in the heart of the Gobi Desert. While there, he uncovered the chilling history of a local landmark that defied both Soviet materialism and human reason. 18 kilometers north of the military base, buried deep within what is now a restricted mining zone, lay the ruins of a 1950s Soviet forced labor camp. Its inmates were the Vlasovites, Soviet soldiers accused of high treason during World War II and condemned by military tribunals to break stone in the unforgiving Mongolian desert. The labor was brutal and torturous. Hundreds of prisoners would stand in single-file lines stretching for miles, passing heavy building stones by hand from the quarries to construction sites. Every man wore a rough uniform stamped with a criminal ID, and their unique inmate numbers were permanently tattooed onto their left forearms. Driven to absolute despair by starvation, heat, and relentless beatings, suicide was a daily occurrence. Near the stone quarry, on the lip of a barren, dried-up riverbed, stood a single, massive Siberian elm tree, Kailas. It was the only living thing for miles. One by one, broken prisoners walked to this tree to hang themselves. By the late 1960s, the bark of the elm was heavily scarred with desperation. Inmates from almost every Soviet republic had carved their last testaments into its wood. "I have no desire to live. Goodbye," and "Forgive me, my sweet Natasha." Names, birth dates, and hometowns covered every inch of the trunk. It was whispered that over 100 condemned soldiers drew their last breath from its branches. The local Mongolian nomads deeply feared the tree, calling it Mu Yorin Mod, the tree of evil omen. They believed the agonizing souls of the dead soldiers had nested within its roots. No herder would graze their animals within miles of it. In the mid-1980s, the Soviet military command decided to modernize the officers' recreational club in Zunbayan, building a luxurious outdoor swimming pool. An opportunistic military officer, searching for decorative materials in the mountains, spotted the massive, ancient elm. Ignoring its dark history, he hooked heavy steel chains to his military truck, ripped the tree from the dry riverbed, and transported it back to the base. He erected the massive, dead elm right in the center of the pool's relaxation area as a rustic centerpiece. When the local elders saw this, they were horrified. "You have taken a cursed monument of suicide and planted it in a place of pleasure," they warned. "This will bring blood." But this was the era of militant state atheism. The communist officers laughed off the old nomads' superstitions as uneducated nonsense. Shortly after the tree was installed, the pool began to collect its debt. Young, healthy soldiers and seasoned officers began to drown in the pool under inexplicable circumstances. In 1976, a brilliant young officer named Batarku, a recent graduate of the National Military Academy's Artillery Division, went for a routine swim. Despite being in peak physical condition, he suddenly sank to the bottom as if dragged down by invisible chains and drowned before anyone could reach him. The pool became a graveyard. The only person who seemed immune to its curse was a legendary local woman named Tsetsegki, immortalized in the famous military folk song, "Zunbayan is a beautiful land." A phenomenal swimmer, she frequented the pool, but was protected by her pure spirit and local roots. As the body count rose, the commander of the Zunbayan garrison had no choice but to yield to reality. He issued a strict, classified order to drain the pool and lock the gates permanently. The true anomaly occurred on the final night. The evening before the facility was to be boarded up, guards reported a strange, shifting fog around the pool. By morning, the massive, multi-ton Siberian elm tree had completely vanished. There were no tire tracks, no broken fences, and no records of heavy machinery entering the base. The old herders whispered that someone with a corrupt heart had stolen the accursed wood under the cover of night to weaponize its curse against their enemies. Today, the elders have passed away, the base is abandoned, and the final resting place of the suicide tree remains a ghost story buried in the Gobi sands.
The finger-sized spirit that demanded alcohol. During the height of summer, 2 young lamas who were disciples at the western temple of the Ganden monastery departed from the capital city of Kori, intending to wander through the countryside to practice asceticism and elevate their scriptural knowledge. As they traveled, they entered the territory of the Dalai Choinkor Van Banner and stopped at the home of a nomadic family to request shelter for the night. The family welcomed the 2 monks with immense hospitality, preparing a rich feast to honor them. Having spent the past several days sleeping exposed in the wilderness, the exhausted lamas gratefully accepted the food and lay down to rest, engaging the master of the house in a relaxed, familiar conversation about the local mountains, waters, and regional flora. Following the meal, the master of the house suddenly reached into the bottom of his wooden chest and pulled out a glistening glass bottle filled with clear liquor. He poured the shimmering alcohol into a massive silver bowl and presented it to the 2 lamas. At the sight of the offering, the monks declined, saying, "We are disciples of the Buddha who follow the sacred path of the scriptures. Consuming alcohol is a sin for us." Upon hearing this, the master's face turned visibly dark and somber. He sighed and confessed, "I will not hide the truth from you. A certain creature that is incredibly fond of alcohol resides within my home. If this entity is not placated with liquor whenever guests arrive, it grows deeply enraged and inflicts all sorts of frustrating disruptions upon us. Furthermore, if anyone refuses to drink our alcohol, it throws violent tantrums, accusing them of refusing to enjoy its provisions. I fear it may very well prevent the 2 of you from finding a single moment of peace or rest tonight. Therefore, would it perhaps be better for you to continue along your journey while there is still daylight left?" With those words, he turned his back to them and sat in silence. The elder of the 2 lamas responded, "Well, if that is the nature of the situation, hand the bowl to me." He extended his hands, while the master of the house silently handed over the alcohol and watched. The monk raised the silver bowl to perform a libation ritual, surgem, to bless their journey. But just as he was about to bring it to his lips to take a tiny sip, he felt a sudden, distinct tug on his side. He turned his head in astonishment and discovered a bizarre, unrecognized figure, measuring no larger than a human finger, standing directly beside him. The tiny creature was flailing its arms wildly and screaming at the top of its lungs, "Give me that alcohol!" Startled and deeply flustered, the elder lama turned to his companion and asked, "Did you hear that noise?" The younger monk looked at him with immense confusion and replied, "Hear what? What exactly are you hearing?" Realizing that the tiny creature was visible and audible only to him, the elder lama looked back toward the master of the house, who gestured to him, saying, "Place the bowl down on the table." The moment the monk complied, he thought to himself, while looking at the tiny figure, Come over here and drink it yourself." Instantly, the finger-sized entity seemed to leap through the air. The sudden movement startled the elder lama so badly, he nearly dropped the silver bowl, spilling a portion of the liquor. By the time he stabilized the bowl and looked around to see where the creature had gone, it had vanished entirely from sight. He turned to the host and said, "Please, pour another bowl." The master replied, "Now it is this lama's turn," and handed the fresh bowl to the younger monk.
The young lama took the silver bowl into his hands, but within moments he let out a sharp gasp of shock. He slammed the bowl onto the table with immense haste, leaned over to the elder monk's ear, and whispered in a frantic panic, "Do you see that creature sitting directly on the rim of the alcohol bowl? It keeps muttering to me, 'If you offer me this liquor, Nanchid, I want to enjoy it.'" Terrified, the young monk scrambled to his feet, crying out, "An evil omen has possessed this bowl and defiled our provisions. We must leave this instant." The elder lama, who now easily understood that the tiny spirit manifested itself only to whoever was physically holding the bowl of alcohol, turned to the master of the house and demanded, "What is the true story behind this?" The host lowered his head and explained, "My late father was a man who was deeply dependent on alcohol. Whenever a bowl of liquor was placed in his hands, he would never set it down until he had drained it entirely. On his deathbed, he strictly commanded me, 'Make sure to offer the finest portion of your alcohol to my memory every single morning.' I failed to fulfill his final wish. As a direct consequence, his wandering soul became trapped inside my home. Whenever guests arrive, he endlessly demands alcohol and refuses to grant us a single moment of peace." Upon hearing this tragic explanation, the elder lama requested 3 separate cups to be brought out, filled each of them to the brim with liquor, and had them placed neatly on the table. They watched the cups intently, but the finger-sized spirit did not manifest. However, the moment everyone lay down to sleep for the night, the entity materialized directly on the hem of the elder lama's robe. It began screaming incessantly into the dark, shouting, "Give me alcohol!" Every time the monk sat up to look, the space was entirely empty. Plagued by the relentless, invisible screaming throughout the entire night, the lamas were unable to close their eyes for a single second. As the welcome light of dawn finally broke, the monks were eager to depart. Just as they were preparing to leave, the younger lama pointed to the floor and said, "Look, there is something lying directly beneath you." The elder monk reached down and picked up a small scrap of fabric. The moment the master of the house saw it, he recoiled in absolute shock and exclaimed, "That is a scrap from the fabric wrap that was used to shroud my late father's corpse. Because you refused to give him your alcohol, he tormented you with it all night long." These accounts provide a vivid window into the historical anxieties of the Mongolian steppe, emphasizing the spiritual consequences of failing to honor familial obligations and the hazardous nature of wild, abandoned spaces.
If these whispers moved you, leave a like and subscribe. Keep the rumor alive.